Melinna Bobadilla from Para Rosa. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. I think it's an amazing project that you put together here with what's the name of the director again?
Catherine Boyd Batstone. She's the writer director.
Awesome, awesome. Tell us a little bit about the project because I'm a huge history buff, and when it comes to the Latino community, we're always skipping over events that we should really know about, and I think this is one of them. So can you give us a little bit of background on the project?
Right. I think that's unfortunately how US history has functioned until this moment, uh, making sure that we skip over really important historical moments that I think are at the intersection of many issues. So just a little background about this project, and then you'll automatically see what I'm talking about when I say it's at the intersection of many issues. So between 1968 and 1974, countless Latinas, primarily Mexican and Mexican American women, were sterilized without their consent. They were forcibly sterilized and violated at the LA County General Hospital. And the building where this was taking place was the Women and Children's Hospital, which was part of LA County General. So in 1974, there was a class action lawsuit. It's called Quilligan versus Madrigal, if anyone wants to Google it. And Madrigal was the lead plaintiff. She was one of the women who experienced this. And though there was 10 women that were part of this lawsuit, we know this happened to many, many women. Sadly, some of them were unable to come forward. Some of them might never have even been reached because their cases weren't documented. So they might have continued trying to have children and never really known what happened. So our short film focuses on this moment in history. My character, Eva, I play the lead, and I'm also the co-producer of the film. And Eva is a composite of the experiences of several of the women that were involved in the case. And we really drew a lot of inspiration from the PBS documentary No Más Bebés, which I highly encourage people to check out. And as you mentioned, despite you being a Latino history buff, this is not something that is talked about. This is not something that we're taught about. And I think that it's absolutely Latino, Latinx, Latina, Chicano, Chicanx history, but this is US history. This happened here in Los Angeles. This is LA history. This is a case of institutional racism that manifested in medicine. Also, when we talk about reproductive justice and any sort of feminism, we have to zoom out and see what are the differences in terms of how justice is accessed for Latinas and Black women and Indigenous women versus perhaps more affluent white women and their counterparts.
Yeah, it's amazing, and right now what we're going through in history right now is understanding some of the injustices that has happened throughout history to certain groups. And do you think that the Latinx community, should take like a note about being a little bit more vocal? Sometimes our community is a little bit more quiet than others in terms of speaking out against injustices and really recognizing the points in history where our communities have been victimized.
Absolutely. I think not only this moment demands it, but the institutional and systemic inequity and racism essentially that this country was built upon demands it. And if we are ever expecting to see any sort of systemic change, I know that sometimes there seems to be, at least within the Latinx community, there's a lot of focus around undocumented issues and immigration, which we should absolutely get behind and be energized about and speak up about. I want to see more of a unity in terms of how we speak up and show up for other communities. And so, I know a lot of folks are really learning right now and trying to get the right wording, the right terms, figure out how to best be not just an ally, but an accomplice and really show up and walk alongside the Black community. I also think it's important to hold up the mirror to our own community as Latinos, because when we say, for example, Latinos for Black lives, well, actually there are Black lives that are part of the Latinx community. Those are not mutually exclusive. And I think that if we take a look at, unfortunately, the fact that we have a common oppressor and the same system, the same systemic injustices oppressing both of our communities, and that there is a lot of crossover, then it seems kind of like a no-brainer. It's an automatic that we stand up. because I don't think that folding into an oppressive system and assimilating into it is really an answer for liberation and justice.
Well, that seems like a whole other. I would love to get into that. I know we have limited amount of time, but not assimilating into an oppressive. That's interesting. Let me ask you more about your character and how you said it was like a group of characters put into one. Tell me a little bit more about her.
So Eva is a Mexican woman living in Los Angeles. We meet her in really what should have been one of the most joyful days of her life, when she is at the hospital about to give birth. And unfortunately, she's experiencing a very painful, intense labor. And it was at that moment in time that the doctors and nurses essentially took advantage to push these forms on her and coerce her into signing away the future, her reproductive future. So I think it's important to note that even though a lot of the women that this happened to were coerced into signing the documents, and they lost the case. Essentially, some people could say, negate all the other causes and say, well, they signed it. Well, actually, you're not supposed to sign legal documents under coercion or duress. And if you are experiencing extreme physical labor, like having a child, physical pain during labor, having a child, and perhaps you are under heavy medication, that's not the moment to sign legal documents. And so my character was bilingual. We had her speak English and Spanish. A lot of the women that experienced this trauma were primarily Spanish speakers. Some in the documentary we saw were bilingual, but I want to highlight the fact that it's not only a lack of understanding in terms of the language, but this was specifically targeted at Latinas. This has also happened to Black and Indigenous women. This happened to Boricuas on the island of Puerto Rico. And this is an extension of systemic racism, because the doctors were operating under this mindset of eugenics that, we already have too many brown and Black babies. Right. So we are going to play God, and we are going to decide who gets to have control of their body and who doesn't. And so Eva finds out that this happened to her, not at the hospital, not even a few years later. She finds out when her child is, already like 5 years old, and this attorney shows up at her house and shows her the signature and shows her evidence that she has also been traumatized in this way. So it's not a direct trajectory for Eva once she realizes what she happened to then seek justice, that there's a lot of trauma and pain and denial and fracturing that her and her husband go through before she alone ultimately decides, I need to stand up for myself. I need to connect with these other women, and we need to demand justice.
And just did these doctors and hospitals take it upon themselves to try to, like you said, limit some of the brown communities and Black communities from having babies, or was the government involved in asking or encouraging them to do that?
Well, that's what's unclear, and that's what makes this so insidious, right? That there was sometimes if something is not in the law books and it's not written down or typed out, it can still be a de facto kind of approval legally. So was there a legal mandate saying you need to limit brown and Black babies? No. But was there looking the other way? Was it wrapped in other language around family planning? Absolutely. So that's how we need to look at this, and how I think it absolutely connects to this moment that we have to zoom out and see things systemically as all connected, and how power is concentrated in certain places and how it's enacted in very evil ways, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, this is probably one of the most evil ones that I read about. I mean, when I read about the film, when I first got the release from your team, I actually, it was kind of like hard to believe, and then I started doing the research and learned about it. Last couple of things. Where can we watch Para Rosa? Is that going to be released on any platforms, or I know the festival circuit has kind of been interrupted by COVID.
Right.
What are the plans for the film?
Well, the plan for the film is really to get distribution. We think the world should see it. I think that we definitely are going to be connecting with festivals as they explore, how to put out work now, whether it's online streaming or what have you. I know that on the 25th, we're partnering with We'll Grow Latina, an organization out of LA. And so we're going to be having a special screening and a Q&A with the actors. But this is really a moment again, and I can't, you know, I automatically have to connect it to this moment in time where we are calling for people to look at how white supremacy plays itself out in institutions, and that happens in Hollywood. So is there a mandate that says we have to limit the Latinx voices, or we have to limit Latinx voices who look like me, who are brown presenting, who don't get, you know, are not white passing? No, but if we look at the body of work that's out there, especially with Latino media as well, then we know. So this is a moment where we need Hollywood and distribution companies and streaming platforms to step up and to walk the walk and to really uplift work that centers stories of communities of color and centers actors of color. And another thing I'm really proud of is that we have so many women that worked on this project, from our producers to our director and our writer, to our amazing DP and our editor. Like, this is an amazing team, and I think this film really speaks for itself. So anyone that watches it, you know, help us open some doors. That's how we walk the walk.
Awesome, and we hope to help. So thank you so much, and thank you for talking to us today, and thank you for being part of this film. I think it's a very important film, and I see some good things coming out of it.
Thank you, Humberto.